All right, so we're on.
Yeah, so I started breathing. I started doing the breathing, and yeah, it felt really good at the start. Because I felt like my breath was always like on like it was never really full and deep like that. So it felt really good to breathe like that. As I started doing it more though, like I started getting a lot of like resistance coming up, negative emotions, things like that. Um, but I kept breathing and just relaxing more into it, trying not to force it so much. And yeah,
Tell me more about the resistance.
uh, it feels like my body like doesn't want to breathe full, like it wants to go back into that uh, like that shallow and restricted breathing. Like it just doesn't want the air. I don't know why, but
Yes, that's exactly correct. And you kind of do know why.
good.
And the reason is because that you go back to the old, normal, ordinary habit, the
Yeah.
old way of doing things. Um, another clear example of that is hmm, in the United States, they have a tradition called the New Year's resolution that they're going to do something this year to make a positive change in their life.
Mm.
And almost always, these New Year's resolutions are not met. An example of that would be the signing up for the gym to start working out at the gym or the health center. And so that what they know that this happens that the membership goes way up in January and February, and also the gym usage goes up in January, February, and March. But after March, in April, the user base, the number of people coming to the gym starts to dwindle off. They've already made their money.
Hmm.
They've already signed you up. Whether you come or not is up to you. If they charged according to usage, then they'd all go broke.
Mm. Yeah.
All right. And so that's the natural habit of the mind. The natural tendency of the mind is to see something good and then try it for a while, see the benefits of it, recognize how marvelous and wonderful it is, and then they stop doing it. Why? Because the old way um, comes back in charge if there's no motivation for change. And so your motivation for change has to be pretty high. And that part of that then is my job is to keep the student motivated, to keep them practicing.
Mhm.
Because there will be a time, even though they may not be practicing, let us say, up to their own standards, still, whatever they're doing is changing those old habit patterns slowly, slowly
Mhm.
into a new way of doing it. And as the motivation grows, the motivation grows with the skill set.
Yeah.
And the skill set grows along with our confidence. Our motivation and our confidence are interrelated. And that basically, um, you've probably heard of the state called Sotapan or the stream enterer.
Yeah.
All right. Do you know what that means? I
You.
know I know what it means, and it generally takes me 20 minutes to an hour to describe it. But one of the most important qualities is that it's in the increased dedication to the path.
Mm-hmm.
That once we really do see that the Eightfold Noble Path of the Buddha is really the only way to live, then our motivation gets really high and our determination gets really high. Now, if you don't mind, I'd like to give you a couple of words so that we can see the distinctions in the way that the words are used. I'm using the word dedication, but let's look at that word in or in opposition to it would be devotion.
Mm-hmm.
The word devotion means that we're devoted to something on the outside. Like you can become devoted to a particular political party or to a particular church or to a particular ideology. But this is different than that devotion. This is actually dedication, but even a better word would be determination. That I am determined to come out of the crap. And that determination becomes part of right view. The right view is that this is the only way to go. But that's a fairly, let us say, advanced state. That in fact, when the student comes to the position that this is the only way to go, that actually is the pivot point or the change between the path of Sotapan and the fruit. That we do begin to really experience the fruit of the Sotapan after we have the determination and the dedication. And that dedication is basically to be true to ourselves, to tell the truth, to be willing to see what we're doing wrong. Because if we can't see what we're doing wrong, then it's really hard to change it. That's called denial. So basically, that midpoint of the Sotapan is when we are no longer conveniently willing to lie to ourselves. And here you are in that struggle right now. So, congratulations. That's a good place to be. That
Mm-hmm.
you try something and then you begin to fall back, and then you say, wait a minute, I don't want to fall back. I want to come and I want to continue on. I want to keep doing it.
Yeah.
So, this is the way that it works. Now, this uh, dedication or this determination um, begins to grow with confidence. And that confidence grows with the eradication of doubt. And doubt does not leave very quickly. But the important kind of doubt, in fact, there are three kinds of doubt that we work with. The first kind of doubt is the doubt that everybody has to deal with. And they generally don't deal with it very successfully, so they stay in that level of doubt. And that's the doubt about who did this, who made this mess, who is responsible for the crap I'm in. All right. And the reason why that doubt is there is because when we're really, really little kids, we don't have any control over our lives. And so um, we can see that my mommy is responsible and she puts my clothes on. So I'm not responsible for putting my
Yeah.
own clothes on. By the time the kid is 6 years old, he learns to put his own clothes on. All right. And so, but it takes years for the child to learn to even put his own clothes on. So we get that ingrained, built in idea that we need help, that we can't do it on our own. This is the first level of doubt. And it is remarkable because, in fact, even though students seem to get over it, they keep falling back into that. And you can see that, in fact, the um, the rationale or the outcome of this kind of doubt is religions and governments. In other words, I cannot take care of myself. I need to join a political party. And when that political party gets power, then they can fix the government, and then I'll be happy.
Hmm. The victim. Yeah.
Or uh-huh, or I can't save myself. I need a teacher. I need a psychologist. I need a guru. I need a preacher. I need a religion, right? This is the first kind of doubt. In fact, you would have never called me on Skype if you didn't have that kind of doubt. If you were absolutely capable of managing your own life and you knew it because you were quite successful at it, then you don't need help. Now, there's a false kind of sense of that when people become very accomplished, um, and let us say they also make a lot of money, but then they think that the wealth is going to protect me from my own bad feelings. But in fact, what happens is that when they feel bad, they say, "Oh, the only way to feel good is to make money." So in fact, they depend upon the money, or they depend upon the job or the profession. But in all cases, it's something on the outside that we depend upon rather than drawing it in from within. That's the first kind of doubt, and everybody has it. But there comes a point when we say, no, I am responsible for my own life. That if I'm going to be happy, if I'm going to change, it's completely up to me. And so that brings in eventually that second kind of doubt. And the second kind of doubt is, now that I know that it's up to me, can I do it? Am I capable of coming out of my own stuff? And then the third kind of doubt, which eventually has to be dealt with over and over again until it comes to the point, and that is, if I'm going to get myself out of my own trouble, what is the path? What is the way? What is the method for me to do that? And so when we come to understand, oh, it's the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Noble Path is in fact the method, is the path, is the way, and that there is no other way. The reason why there's no other way is because this is the only way that is totally, totally up to you to do. All of the other methods, all the other paths, all the other methods say you have to get help
Yeah.
from the outside. An example of that would be the religion of, say, Christianity, that you need Jesus as your Savior because you cannot save yourself. All right? But here you are now beginning to practice and you're beginning to recognize, oh, yes, you can save yourself.
Hmm.
And so that's the working with the second doubt. Now, as this doubt is eradicated through consistent practice that leads to success, and you feel that success, then you say, yeah, I can do this, and it gets me to the state that I really like. I'm going to keep doing this. And I'm going to become dedicated to the path. I'm going to become determined to stay on the path. This is actually two ways of looking at it. You can look at it in the sense of the normal way of looking at it is over a long period of time, that I'm determined now over a long period of time that I'm going to follow the path. And that's useful and valuable. But there is another way of looking at it, and that is right now. right now, not someday, but right now, can I get out of my stuff? And one of the things that you're beginning to look at now, in fact, that's the first thing that you mentioned, is that you can see resistance to that change within you.
Hmm.
That resistance was always there, but you didn't even know it. But now that you're beginning to practice, you're beginning to see both the results and the old resistance to the change.
Yeah.
Well, that's going to be there for a while. And in fact, that resistance that you're talking about, you could think of also as merely a hindrance. That resistance is one of the hindrances. Oh, why bother? Oh, poor me. Oh, I'll never get out of this. Oh, this is hard work. I'm not sure if it's worth the effort. And these are the doubts that come up. In fact, doubt is one of the hindrances.
Yeah.
And the resistance is measured in this doubt. And there's another one is the restlessness that occurs. That even though you are dedicated and determined to do the path, still there are things that want to pull you off the path and take you over the future or something. And so these are just merely hindrances. And when we recognize those hindrances, that's it. That's the waking up. To
Yeah.
recognize that the mind is in hindrance, or in your case, the mind is in resistance, or the mind wants to go back to the old way of doing it. Now, there's one more point with that, and that is that in fact, breathing correctly is a kind of exercise, a physical exercise. And that when people go to the gym or start running or doing things like that, then the body requires the air. And so the reptilian part of the brain forces that air. And
Yeah.
so we start breathing. So part of the going to the gym is not just getting the muscles of the arms strong, but it begins to make the whole body strong because they've got to breathe, they've got to move their body, they've got to use these muscles in this area of the body. Well, you're just sitting on the floor, but it's still an exercise program. You may not be developing the muscles of the body to make them strong, but we are developing the muscles of the chest to make the breathing better. And so this is an important part that you have to recognize that that exercise of the muscles of the chest is exactly the same kind of stuff that happens at a gym. And
Hmm.
we say, oh, well, I want to be strong and I want to be healthy, but this is too much work. That this is a lot of effort. And in fact, in the beginning, one of the most important things for, let us say, a trainer, if you can get into that situation, the trainer wants you to push yourself, but not too hard, not too much, just enough. An example of that is if you go to the gym and you work out a little or you work out some, and then you come back away from it, and there's no result or benefit that you can see. The other possibility is go to the gym and work too hard, and then the next day the body is tired and sore completely. That's too much effort. But in the middle someplace, the sweet spot is that I'm actually doing enough exercise
Yeah.
and that I can feel the changes of the body because we're doing these breathing exercises, making the muscles a little bit stronger. So that bodily component is there. We're going to make some changes to the muscle continuing to breathe enough, we're also making big changes all over the body. We're making changes in the blood chemistry. We're making changes in the kinds of uh, oh, the pH level, for instance. If the body has carbon dioxide, then mixed with water, carbon dioxide causes carbonic acid. And so the pH level, or the pH level, not a D, will go up or go down, depending upon, I think, yeah, it goes up. The pH level goes up. Uh, and so that triggers automatically that we need more air. So if you've been running or at the gym or whatever, you start to breathe more just naturally. Well, instead of having that part of the brain do the more breathing naturally, we're going to take charge of that. We're going to take control away from the reptilian brain and put it into the frontal cortex. Going to put it into this part of the brain, which is the one that needs that oxygen.
Mhm.
You can think of it as the reptilian brain is kind of like a laptop, and that the frontal cortex is like a supercomputer, and it needs a lot more energy to do that supercomputing than it is to just do the old easy program.
That's true.
So they're
I feel it. It's so easy to just go back into the old stuff, like just go on autopilot. But
mm-hmm.
it it takes energy to do something new.
Yes, in fact, that's the whole point about autopilot for long trips. The autopilot on modern commercial aircraft, um, they've had autopilots for many years, and in fact, the autopilot is not very sophisticated. Boeing has tried to add more sophistication in their 737, and they've caused some crashes. But the old autopilot was basically nothing much more than a gyroscope, so that you could, and it could have, it could control yaw and pitch and attitude and things like this, and heading mostly. But the plane now is going in the direction that it was told to go in, and that it doesn't really watch where it's going. You can run into a stone cloud or other aircraft or birds or mostly turbulence. But while the aircraft is on automatic pilot, the captain doesn't have much of anything to do. He can, go to sleep or whatever. But when he does take control of the plane, he either does it um, occasionally just to make sure, or he does it because of an emergency or whatever. But when the captain does take control of the plane, now he's got to fly it. When you turn the autopilot off, that means now the captain has to keep the right thrust. He's got to do the right heading. He's got to do the yaw and the pitch and keep the plane stable and all of that kind of stuff. And that in the old days, when the pilots had to fly a plane without any autopilot, it was actually quite a lot of work because they had to be here now every second to maintain the controls. That they could not put a rope on the throttle and just expect the plane to fly itself. They had to pay attention, and that's in fact the reason why there's so many automobile accidents, is because people are not watching where they're going. But there's also not just automobile and driving wrecks and disasters, but our whole lives are like that. That we
Yep.
kind of go on autopilot, and then we're not watching where we're going, and we're constantly winding up in bad feelings, constantly winding up in the ditch rather than staying on the path. So this is in fact the wake up process. Become the captain and stop letting the autopilot operate the craft. And the more you do this, the more you take control, then the easier ultimately it comes. But there will be spots and times when it feels like that the old is taking over again. And this takes a new kind of dedication or a new kind of determination that we are going to stay in control. Now, going back to this question of doubt that we had a few moments ago, there comes a point in time when, by coming out of the old way and ridding ourselves of the hindrances in the moment, coming to a state of satisfaction, doing some deep breaths and liking that, once we start doing that over and over again, then we gain confidence that we can do this. That confidence actually comes in the skill of sati, that we have to remember to do this. After we remember to do it, then we also have to remember to take the right effort. Now,
Mhm.
it doesn't take much effort. And in fact, many of the meditation students in the West, they work too hard. They put in too much effort. They want too much out of it. And because of that, they work too hard, they become disappointed, and they quit. So it has to be balanced to right effort. And the right effort, the way to talk about it is right effort is just enough effort to actually get the job done.
Mhm.
Just enough effort to get the job done. Well, in this case, we're talking about breathing. So that's going to take some effort. It's going to take some effort. And that a lot of students, they don't like that effort. This is another case of, you probably heard the old expression, um, ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. Have you heard that before?
Yeah.
Okay, it's actually a quote from Jesus, but he left out the third line. Ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free, but first it's going to piss you off. What does that mean? That means that right now, while you're learning this meditation, while you're learning to breathe, while you're learning anapanasati, you're going to see things about yourself that you don't like. We can see it like this, that if we have been in a state of delusion and we thought we knew what was right, when we're actually confronted with what's right, we don't like that. We don't like the truth. And there's a lot of truth out there that is people don't like it and try to resist it. One of the big ones is death. You're going to die. You really are going to die. I probably will die before you, but there's no guarantee. You may be dead before you take your next breath. You don't know. All right. But we need to understand that over and over again, that life is temporary. Let's get the best out of it that we can. Why go along in misery and suffering in an ordinary life, clinging to life?
Yeah.
That everybody clings to life, and they cling to life because we are, let us say, pre programmed to cling to life. It's called the self preservation instinct. And without that self preservation instinct, you probably wouldn't be alive today. That if there had not been self preservation instinct in the generations before, they may have not ever had you. All right. So that self preservation instinct is what's kept humans alive and, in fact, populating the earth to the point that we're now the problem that the planet earth is infested with too many humans, and each one of us humans have that self-preservation instinct. I've got to stay alive no matter what, and so they live a life of no matter what. But if you're going to recognize that, oh no, this is all temporary, I've got to make the best of it that I can.
Mm-hmm.
And I can make the best of every moment that I can, so long as I remember to make the best of every moment that I can. Now, that is actually a position that is quite noble because most people don't have that kind of position. They just kind of go along to get along. This happens when we're children, that we do what we're told to do. We don't like it. We would rather go play with our toys, but the teacher says, no, you sit down here and you do A, B, C, and one, two, three. And the kid doesn't like it, but he goes along with it. And so we spend our whole lives going along to get along,
Yeah.
and we don't like it so much. But we have that survival instinct, and so very few people take the choice of, hey, man, I'm really out of here. This life thing that you guys are doing sucks. And in fact, there have been occasionally famous teachers who would teach that the right thing to do is suicide. Just get out. Humanity would be better
Oh
off with that, at
shit.
least you. And then the students would ask him, well, wait a minute, if you're advertising suicide, why are you still alive? Why don't you demonstrate by example? And the answer to that is, oh, well, I've got to spread the news. And if I don't spread the news, then nobody will understand that dying is better than living. But somewhere in there, there's the middle path. And that middle path between suffering through life or dying early to get rid of that kind of suffering is to find a way of getting out of the suffering in this moment. But you see, people see, oh, well, I'm suffering now and I've been suffering before. That means my life is suffering and I will suffer into the future. And I'll go along to get along because I'm afraid to die. And I want to stay alive with the very, very slight hope that maybe someday things will get better. But now that you're practicing, you're actually recognizing, oh no, things can get better because I can make them better.
Mm.
So the first step, the very first step of Sotapan is when the student can recognize no matter how obstructed the mind is, no matter what restlessness or what doubt or what greed that I have in the mind, I can come out of that and come to the here now to see the truth of the situation as it really is. Even if that truth of the situation is that life sucks. But then we recognize, oh, life sucks because people are sucking. If people stop sucking, then life doesn't suck so much. What do I mean by sucking? That means we want things. We keep sucking things in. We want, we want, we want. We think that, oh, if I get that, then I'll feel better. And then it happens and I get it and then I feel better for a short time. And then I want to feel good again, so I have to suck on something else. And very few of us understand that there's an alternative to sucking to get the things that we want so that we'll be satisfied and happy, and just sit down and be happy. Straight, all on its
Mhm.
own. That's the important thing is that you do not need anything on the outside. There's nothing to suck on to get filled. That feeling of accomplishment, that feeling of being filled is a skill to be developed. And in the process of the waking up, we begin to see, oh, there's that resistance in it to pull us back into the old way of doing it. And then you don't like that very much. And so after a while of doing this breathing meditation, and I say a while of it is practicing it for a month or two or maybe even a year. And then the student will say, hey, wait a minute. I've been practicing all of this breathing meditation, and now I should have it as, let us say, I want that to be included into the automatic pilot so that I don't have to think about breathing anymore. I don't have to think about doing the right thing anymore. I can sort of fall back now into an old habit pattern, but now that old habit pattern is a new habit pattern where I feel good all the time. But that doesn't happen that quickly.
Mhm.
And so, even though you'll find some resistance to the breathing, you can say, yes, but if I follow that resistance, then I'll be going back to the old way that I was dissatisfied with. That's why I became interested in meditation, is because I was dissatisfied. And we have to keep track of the fact that if I let the old way go back to the way that it was, that my level of satisfaction is going to start to dwindle down. That we need to keep up the practice. And it has to be the correct practice, because I know a lot of people who practice meditation and they practice wrongly. They become dedicated to practicing meditation, but they're not getting very much out of it. But when you're practicing correctly, you feel really good. But that feeling of being really good is not going to become part of the automatic pilot in the first few years.
Mhm.
That you have to practice over and over again, and you have to get used to it. So um, there's a lot of things that we believe, and we're going to find that they're not true. They're not true. But it's going to continue to piss you off because you don't like it. All right. One of them is this resistance that you're talking about. That the body itself will have resistance to it. Why do you make me breathe? Why do you make me work? I was doing just fine on shallow breathing. Well, the answer is no. It feels a lot better to be woken
Yeah.
up, to be full of breath, to be vibrantly alive. And so we keep that model going. So that first step is the most important one of all. And that is that no matter how obstructed the mind gets, and that can be years into practice, but when those obstructions come up, the resistance to the practice comes up, then we can say, I see that. And I know that no matter how obstructed the mind gets, no matter how much doubt there is, no matter how much anxiety, no matter how much tension I'm experiencing in this moment, I can, with the right effort and remembering, I can come out of it. I can remember to come out of it. I can take a few deep breaths. I can gladden the mind. I can start looking on the bright side of life. This is the first step of nobility. This is the step that very, very, very few humans ever get to. It's noble, it's super mundane, and it's a factor of the path. And that is that point that no matter how obstructed the mind is, I can come out of it. That's a good point to remember, to actually memorize that.
Yeah.
No
Because
matter how messed up my mind is, I can come out of it by remembering and then taking a few deep breaths and change my attitude. The attitude of the loser, which was in all of those hindrances, in all of those obstructions, in all of that resistance, in all of that doubt, in all of that sucking, and I can come out of it. But that takes over and over and over again. It takes practice. It takes dedication. It's a skill that has to be developed. And in the Pali, the word bhavana or bhawan uh, is exactly that. And many, many temples in Thailand have that kind of a name. Uh, for instance, the Bhavana Society is what Gunaratana has in West Virginia, or Deepa Bhawan, or Wat Bhawan. Wat Bhawan is one of the biggest temples in Bangkok. Actually, the whole name of it is Wat Bhawan Bonavich. But that word Bhawan in the Pali is the word that we would have in English of to develop or to grow or to make the skills, to train to make these skills. That skill is not automatic. Very, very few people learn to play the piano automatically just by sitting down at the piano. They have to practice it over and over and over again. And so this is my job with you in the beginning of your practice, because you're just kind of new to this now. And so I want to give you this pep talk that you can remember to come out of it. You can remember that when that resistance is there, take a deep breath into that resistance. When you recognize it all, this is hard work and I don't want to do it. Wake up to that and say, yes, I can. I know that no matter how obstructed the mind or how many brain parts that I've had, when I wake up to it, I can throw that stuff out and I can come back and enjoy the moment. Be here now. That's the whole skill. The whole skill, first off, is to be free from the hindrances. The second of the skills is with that seclusion from the hindrances, to have that stuff away from us is actually quite nice. It is really nice to be free from all the worries and sufferings of the world and be here now, enjoying this pleasant moment, this present pleasant moment. And that's also the building up of the skill of being successful, the feeling of success. This is actually a feeling, and it gets really big. In fact, that feeling of success is what drives almost all of humanity, except they only rarely feel success. And sometimes they want something really big to happen so that they have a really big feeling of success. Like, for instance, winning a race or cheating somebody out of $1,000,000. And they feel really successful at that. But then it's on the outside world. They don't recognize that actually the feeling of success is something that they did on the outside or on the inside. They just use the outside as an excuse to let themselves feel really good. So if that's the case, then you should think that it would be really worthwhile to start developing the skill to feel as good as you want to feel as successful as you want to become that lion rather than the victim that I was raised to be, that goes along to get along. There is actually, out of the old, let us say, religious traditions of India that have been labeled as Hindu or Hinduism, they talk about reincarnation in the sense of the various places where you can be reborn. One of the places that you could be reborn is hell. Everybody's big on hell. Not that I go to hell, but I want you to go to hell. So there's the hell worlds. The next one is the level of what we call the hungry ghost. those that the apparitions that want things, they haunt, but they are never satisfied. And then there is the animal world. And basically, that's what humans are spending most of their time in. The animal is like a draft animal, does what he's told to do. He's got no choice in it. So the donkey, you know, they have the whole idea of the carrot and the stick. They put the carrot out and dangle that in front of the donkey, and then they beat him on the butt. And between the carrot and the stick, the donkey will finally move. Okay? This is human nature. And we become animals that way. And one of the most important qualities of the animal is that they're quite foolish. They're quite stupid. They don't change easily. They're set in their patterns. It's very hard to train a dog, for instance. And there are some dogs that learn tricks, but I have never heard, or seen of a dog that learned to read. They're just not capable of it. So there's a level of foolishness or a level of ignorance or a level of stupidity that has the quality of being an animal. And humans are in that state quite often. And then the fourth kind of world that one can be born into is called the world of the Asuras. Now, that's equivalent to the Greek gods called the Titans, giving us the word the Titanic. Okay, the Titans are actually warrior gods. And the Asuras are also warrior gods, but they're not very high level gods. And so they don't want to fight because they don't think that they'll win. They're full of fear, in fact. And so now we've got those worlds. We've got the fear of hell, where we're suffering, where we're hot. We have the world of the ghost. We have the world of the animals, and we have the world of the Titans or the Asuras. In fact, you can see the word Asura in the word sure that we have. When someone is sure of something, then that means that we know. But Ashura means to not know. So the Asuras are in fact full of fear. They're full of doubt. In a way, you can see that these worlds that people can be reincarnated in or reborn in are in fact the hindrances themselves. That the hungry ghost is in fact the guy who wants something he can't have. And that we go to hell when we're filled with anxiety, we're filled with anger, or we're in the state of Asura when we're full of fear. And so many people spend quite a lot of their lives in one of these four states. And the Buddha would use the word reborn, that we are reborn. If we are out and, let us say, completely human, we're completely satisfied, we're in the state of what we would call the first jhana, and then the old stuff comes back. It will come back in the form of anxiety, for instance, or anger will come up. That means that we're being reborn into hell. That's a hell world for us. If we start wanting something, then we're in the hungry ghost, the Pitta. And if we are dull, if we're stupid, if we are kind of sleepy, if we're drowsy, then we're in that animal world of going along to get along. And so these worlds that we have are actually just mental states, and all of them have the quality of suffering, and they also all have the quality of a self to suffer. And so we need to stay out of these selfish worlds. And if we stay out of those selfish worlds, that means that we can come back to the state of satisfaction. So whenever you see yourself in one of these states, then that is sati. I can see that I'm in hell. I can see that I've got anxiety. I can see that I'm angry. I can see that I am afraid. That I can see that I'm in a state of want. Once we can see that stuff, then we decide that, oh, I don't want anything to do with that anymore. Let's put that away. And yet it keeps coming back. And we see it again. And we say, no, I want to get rid of that stuff. And after 10,000 times of seeing it and getting rid of it, it comes back again. And then we have the thought, oh, this is too much work. But the answer is, okay, well, if it's too much work to get out of it, then what's your choice? Your choice is that you go back into it, that you stop breathing, that you go back into your state of misery. And after your misery for quite a while, then you'll probably call somebody else on Skype or go to a retreat or do something like that because you're completely tired of these hell worlds again. So whenever you get into the state of not liking it, and you say, oh, this breathing is too much work, then you have to wake up to that and say, oh no, it's worth it. It really is worth the effort. If I put in just the right amount of effort, it'll be easy effort. And so we put in the right effort, and that right effort with right view then begins to build that right attitude of, I can do this. And when that attitude is changed sufficiently so that you're at a high level with that, so that no matter how obstructed the mind is, that you can keep coming back. Once you cross that threshold, now you're in the world of the nobles. That's the noble world. The first step of nobility, that super mundane, a factor of the path, is that attitude, I can do this. Or as Barack Obama said, yes, we can. We can do it. That's the winner's attitude. Coming out of that mental attitude of, oh, this is too much work, or look at that resistance, or this pisses me off because I don't like looking at it and whatnot like that. That's the ordinary world of humanity. Your choice. The choice is yours. Are you going to come out of the kama? Or the other word for it is samsara, that wheel of suffering and not liking and feelings and whatnot. And we've talked about these four worlds. Or we can come out of that and come into a state of, oh, well, I'm glad I thought that it would be better to be happy than it is to think about something. And so that's my pep talk for you, is to recognize that it is much better to take just the right amount of effort that it takes to come out of our crap and into a happy state. Over and over again. And if you can do it now, then you can do it next time. And if you can do it now and next time, then you're developing the skill so that the time after that, it becomes a little more skillful. But then there will be times when you fall right down into a real funk. But the question is while you're in that funk, can you come to the point of saying, never mind, I can get myself out of this funk? Never mind, start again. I can get out of that funk and come back and start again and live a life that is pleasant and happy, that I can develop these skills through anapanasati. So what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, right now I feel like this is uh this is the only way to do it, basically. uh, but I've noticed like once you get into those, like as you were saying, hell states, you just start to forget. It's That's the first thing I noticed when I started doing this. It's it's uh it's it's so strange how the mind just like forgets all the stuff. It's like I've never heard it, and it just goes back into its old stuff, and the
Mhm.
tricks it can play on you is like uh so yeah.
All right, so you start identifying these states because that's the animal world. Is
Hmm.
you just forget all about it. You just don't remember that the sati is very poor,
Hmm.
and so that's why we have to train it. It's a training. It's a development. It's a skill to be developed. And surprisingly enough, you could go so far as to say happiness is a skill to be developed.
Yeah.
And that, like, look at a happy birthday and a happy birthday party, and they sing a song and they have the cake and they do all of that kind of stuff, giving presents and gifts, but it's all on the outside. And everyone at that happy birthday party is happy because they're sharing with each other, but none of them recognize that it's not the party and it's not the gifts and it's not the cake and it's not the singing and songs. It's that each individual person at that party decided to be happy.
Yeah.
And there, in fact, is quite possible for people to have a birthday party and nobody's happy. Or maybe it's a mix, and some of them are happy and some of them are not happy. But those who are happy are only happy because they decided to be happy. That is, the birthday party did not make anybody happy, not the party itself. It was the mental attitude that was changed. So go have a happy birthday party every minute that you can remember. Be reborn in the present moment rather than being reborn into hell or being reborn into a stupid animal or being reborn into a forgetful animal or being reborn into fear of death. That's in fact what the Asuras are afraid of. They're afraid of losing that battle and getting killed. That's one of the reasons why people don't compete in competitions, is because they're afraid of losing. Actually, they're afraid of the feelings of loss. But in fact, the only way to really become a champion is by getting in there and practicing, and then you can become the winner. So it takes a while. It's a practice, it's a process, step by step. And it's not even going to be step up, step up, step up like that. Sometimes it's going to be step up and then down. And then you have to step back up again. And when you become dedicated for the path, like you say, you're beginning to understand this is the only way to go. There is no other possible way that's going to get you out of happiness or out of your misery, out of your suffering. If Christianity did that, then the Christians would be all magnificent. They would be generous. They would be happy. There would be a reason why other people would want to come and become Christian with them. But in fact, modern Christianity is plagued with tribalism, racism, trying to get the government to do the job of the individual Christians. And so in America, it's gotten Christianity and Republican Party are almost intertwined. Why? Because the Christianity didn't work. It's possible that it would. It's possible that somebody can say, okay, I'm going to get baptized. And so they go through the baptism ceremony. They take Jesus as their Savior, and now they're free from sin, and now they're absolutely determined that they're going to be free from sin. not just on the outside, but on the inside. Now, generally, what we look at it is sin because we cannot see the sins of others on the inside. We can only see the outside sin. And so people get the idea, oh, if we can train people to behave correctly, in other words, do it on the outside correctly, then somehow or another, magically, it'll get fixed on the inside. And yet many people then will behave. They'll take on all the rules. They'll be a very, very goody two-shoes. They'll be a very, very beautifully well-behaved little Buddhist kid, for instance. And everything that he does is correct and proper, but inside he still feels anger, he feels anxiety, he feels fear, he feels stupidity, and he feels wanting things. He just doesn't show it on the outside.
Yeah, he just
And we give
suppresses it. Yeah.
exactly. But this is actually the cure. And in the way that the cure this really works, you may in fact not behave the way that all of those people who look at the rules and say, oh, if you're really, really well behaved on the outside, that means that you're an evolved, enlightened one. But in fact, the real enlightened ones are not necessarily like that. They may be well behaved, but it depends upon whose criteria for the behavior it is that they're well behaved. Because that's subject to momentary interpretation. And so that's one of the major changes in the attitude that we have to work with. And that is to change it from being long-term oriented with a past and a future and let those things just slide away and only work with this present moment. In other words, saying, oh, well, I feel depressed right now. That does not mean that I will be depressed forever. All I have to do is get myself out of the depression right now. And yet people who are depressed will say, okay, well, I'm depressed now. Let me go someplace and do something and take a course or go to a psychologist or so whatever. And then in the future, my depression will be fixed. But that's not the right way of looking at it. I always look at it that when you're in hell right now, get out of it right now as soon as you recognize it. To take that deep breath and come out. And when there's that resistance, no, come back in. It's too much work to do that. You say, aha, I see that too. In fact, very early in a student's practice, this is the following thing that happens: is that they're sitting there, they're mindful of their breathing, they're practicing meditation. They may even be in the first day of the meditation retreat, and then the mind wanders away. They bring it back, it wanders away again. They bring it back, it wanders away again. And now, when it wanders away, we say, "Oh no, this is too much work. Oh, maybe I'm not doing it right." And so all kinds of doubts will come up. In that regard, the sati, that they woke up to the fact that their mind had wandered away from the breath, is not working. Sati and what came, but it wasn't enough. That we needed to bring in some right view. The right view is, I can come out of this. The right view is, no matter how many times my mind gets obstructed, I can come back out. So if my mind wanders away from the breath, I can say, okay, I can see that. Let's right now come out and come back to the breathing and start again. Never mind, start again, over and over again. And it'll take a while. But you know the benefits. You've already seen the benefits. You're beginning to recognize that, wow, this is really good stuff. In fact, this is the only way out. but there will be resistance. The old stuff will be there. Never mind. Start again.
Hmm. Yep.
Because what is your choice? The choice is either stay in that in that old stuff or come out of it. Even if it takes some effort to come out. We put in that right effort. The right effort is worth it. It's worthwhile. It is much better to feel free. Free from anger, free from sadness, free from anxiety, free from fear, free from doubt, free from want. But it has to be practiced, has to be developed. And you're on your way. So congratulate yourself. Every time that you can see that you're stuck in that crap, you say, aha, I can see it. I can see that I'm stuck in that crap. I can see that I'm afraid right now. Or I can see that I'm angry. Or I can see the anxiety.
Yeah, and the breathing has helped a lot, like because it's actually feeling good. So I know that there's a better place to come back to, like out of all this stuff, and that I can come back to this place, and then yeah, so that's a big part of it as well for me.
That's great. Do you have any questions about what we've talked about today?
No questions.
Great. That makes it eager, huh? That you're eager to practice.
Yeah, yeah, I am for sure.
Okay. As we finish this talk today, I will say this, that we've only talked about the first step of the sotapan. Step 6 is actually the step of eager, that we're enthusiastic, we're eager to practice the Dhamma, that we're always wanting to hear the Dhamma, we're always wanting to think about the Dhamma, that the Dhamma and this practice of anapanasati is the very best thing to think about. And so we become eager for the practice. And so I congratulate yourself for that building up of that skill of eagerness, to be eager to come out of suffering. Enthusiastic is another word for it.
Mm-hmm.
When people think of peacefulness, they think that, oh, well, if somebody's completely accomplished, he's an arahat, he's got no more enthusiasm. That's not true. Oh, no, enthusiasm and eagerness and delight and joy, that's part of the path. And in fact, it's part of the results of the path. That's part of the fruit of the path, is to be eager, to be joyful, to be delighted with life. And so practice those skills. They're all skills to be developed.
Mm-hmm.
The skill to remember, the skill to have the right effort, the skill to have the right view, the skill to have the right attitude, the skill to gladden the mind, the skill to breathe, to get that oxygen, the skill to have that attitude of being a winner, to be the guy that's in champion of your own life. You know, you are the emperor of your own pile of dirt. The question is, are you going to be buried under it? Are you going to be clawing your way out of it? Are you going to be sitting on top of it? To sit on top of your own world. Be on top of the world rather than stuck in it. This is what we actually mean by supramundane or transcendent. Alokatara. It means to be above the world. And then literally in this sense, we're talking about sitting on top of it as opposed to being buried under it. And buried under it is buried under our own grief, our own despair, our own anger, our own fear.
Hmm.
Well, this has been a good talk, and you have no more questions, so I'll shut up and let you go. You've got a friend in the room now. So if there's no more questions, I'll see you in a few days. I
Yeah,
like it that you
yeah,
call often. We'll get
yeah,
somewhere with this.
yeah. I will call again soon.
Excellent.
All
Well,
right.
we'll see you.
Yes. See you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.